Hi, I'm Kim Adamski, HIV prevention specialist at the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective. We're located at 1841 Broad Street in Hartford South End, and we offer sexual health services like STD testing, HIV testing, PrEP referrals, sexual health visits. We also have dental services, and we have support groups like Empowerment, which is a support and social group for gay and bisexual men ages 18 to 35. So today we will be talking about LGBTQ health and fitness with Meghan Crutchley. So Meghan, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kim. So I am a fitness professional, a certified nutrition coach, certified sleep coach, and I also do a lot of work in mindset and have a certification there as well. And so I really help people with their lifestyle choices. Sometimes I call myself a habit coach, although that's an interesting conversation starter. And but it really has to do with, for the past 20 years, I've been studying essentially why people make the choices that they do and what is behind kind of the behaviors that we enact as humans. So, yeah.
It sounds like, honestly, a lot of health coach stuff is psychology, not just knowing about like actually fitness. And I know that you said that that's something that you really like to get into with this. So first I want to ask you, what do you mean with your tagline, queerness is a superpower for behavioral change? Because I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I noticed in after working with students when I was a teacher, but also when I transitioned full time into working as a trainer and nutrition coach and have my own studio in Stanford with my wife, I noticed that behavior change happens when people can get really honest with where they're at right now. Mm-hmm. And they can cut through the stories and the shame and the BS, and also the kind of projecting of kind of saying, this isn't where I am right now. This is focusing more on kind of where you want to be and not paying any attention to the behaviors that you're doing every single day. Mm-hmm. And that's a blind spot that all humans have, for sure, because our mind, basically, we don't want to be uncomfortable and we don't want to be challenged, right? Some people talk about the ego in that way. You were just talking about, psychology. There's a ton of psychology behind behavior change. And for queer people, at the core of who we are, we've had to make this decision at some point in our lives, whether or not we were going to live authentically and face rejection from society, rejection from family, from faith groups, violence, discrimination, death in many countries in the world, or pretend as if we weren't that person, right? That wasn't a fundamental part of our being. And so that's one part of it. And another part of it is this really hard fought lens that we have as a group because of that experience. And some people have amazing experiences with coming out. Some people are kicked out of their homes when they're 14, right? So it's the whole gamut of what might be experienced. But on a day-to-day basis, you have to return to that truth in the face of different things that you might encounter in your life. And so because of that, we also have this lens of seeing how things are constructed in society because they're constructed without us. And in that way, we share, this is part of what happens with when you move away from, the further you move away from, white, heteronormative society, the more impacted you are in this way. And so the queer community isn't the only minority group that's every single minority group is impacted in different ways, and actually their health as well.
I'm sorry, it muted you.
That's okay. So other groups, obviously minority groups, encountered this as well. And you can see the correlation with worse health outcomes the further you move away from the white heteronormative society. But at the same time, because there are queer people in all of those groups, we also are in kind of a special situation, if you will. And as a result, we have this amazing lens that if we choose to, we can choose to see ways in which we construct problems, or ways in which we construct our behavior, and ways in which we might not be true to ourselves, talking about habits and things like that.
Right. Now, you mentioned obviously how minority groups, like white, patriarchal, heteronormative, et cetera, groups have often worse health outcomes. And I know you said you had some statistics and info on that. So can we hear about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a big reason. This is the reason really that when I looked into working with the queer community, when I realized the health statistics and that we have the worst health outcomes out of any group in the United States, it was shocking to me. I cried. I felt guilty that I was a queer health professional and that I wasn't versed in this. And so I really worked to get educated on this. And we're a very underrepresented group when we talk about research. And all people that are in minority groups are less represented in research, including women. So it's something where what we do know is that the queer community suffers to a much greater extent with things like substance abuse. So 20 to 30% of folks in the queer community, suffer from substance abuse of various kinds of drugs and alcohol, versus 8 to 9% in the broader population. Queer women are 49% more likely than straight women to be obese and have risk factors associated with obesity. And it's important to note here that I'm not talking about obesity as a way of, well, basically what it is queer women reject normative beauty standards that are pretty much developed, by men and reinforced. And so that statistic is not surprising to me. And I've lived in that statistic for much of my life, actually. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because you're rejecting these beauty standards and saying that's not valuable to me. I don't need to look like that for somebody else. However, there are serious health implications that do arise with obesity. So it is that when we're talking about it, I'm talking about it in a way of health. And so
now, how do you approach something like that? Being like, like you said, it's good that like traditional beauty standards are being rejected when appropriate, but but still address the health effects of things like obesity.
Yeah. I look at obesity is in what I've learned is like the biopsychosocial world of, so there's a biological aspect to it, there's a social aspect to it, and there's a psychological aspect to it. So you might be predisposed to being obese as a result of your genes. However, we do know that lifestyle affects gene expression, so that genes are turned on, and we actually know that they're turned off now as well. So we can affect our genes as well. And I just approach it from the way of that size does not equate a health. So when you look at someone, you can't make a determinant about their health by how they look. And oftentimes in our society, because thinness is valued over everything else, people assume that people that are really thin are healthy. And I can tell you from a health professional standpoint that is completely not the case. It's not the case with people I've worked with. It's not the case with people in my peer group and my friend group.
Oh yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah, being underweight and not having enough muscle mass on your body is extremely unhealthy, just like, being obese and having other health cofactors can also lead to being unhealthy. Size does not equate health. So that's really how I approach it. Because I myself, like I said, have been in the category of being obese for a very good part of my life. And I was a 3-sport athlete. I was one of the healthiest people among my friends, but I still was in the overweight and then obese category for years. So I know that from my own lived life as well. And actually the people that I work with too on a regular basis in my gym. So Yeah, it gets complicated though. It gets
Of
complicated
course.
because because we have so much shame around our bodies, because so much of our, trauma and past experiences gets lived out in our bodies. And that's something with queer people as well. When we talk about being queer and being unique and finding the habits that work for you to bring you to essentially where you want to be in your life, which is what my whole project is about in the queer community. um, there's we can't just shake the influence that we have absorbed our whole life from images from, I really look at the diet culture, for instance. The diet culture has the same it has the same energy to me, with the diet culture saying, you should be this certain size, or, get six pack abs, or build your booty, or do these. And if you want to do those things, that's fine. But that type of energy to me feels, and equating thinness with value, that energy feels the same way that it does when people say to me, and have in my life, well, if you don't like the negative comments about how you look, or you don't want to deal with these social situations that are uncomfortable, why don't you just grow out your hair? And it's like, you're missing the point.
Ugh, yeah.
So I think in that way, going back to like the queerness as a superpower for behavior change, we have already dealt with so much crap as queer people, and do on a regular basis, that we've been able to persevere because we're all here, right? So we've been able to persevere. We've been able to make significant changes in our lives. A lot of people have been able to come out and proud, and be in their workspace, be in their families, whatever. We've done the hardest things already. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so we have skills that we don't even realize we have. And if we use them for ourselves, and started to become aware of our influences, started to really observe and say, do I really think that? Do I really think that all girls are supposed to have long hair? Do I really think that I'm going to be happier if I lose 20 pounds? Right? These things that are the same type of shaming language that exists in our society. And so we have a special lens to view that. So
Absolutely. So you mentioned that you have for years been pretty active. You said you did 3 sports for years.
yeah.
How did you get into fitness as like a career though?
So interestingly, when I came out, I used fitness to kind of help myself get through. I had a pretty traumatic coming out experience, and I used going to the gym as a way to, I wanted to play sports in college. And so I just got very rigorous about working out. And honestly, I didn't really have much of a social life anymore. And so even though I got really into fitness and health when I was entering into college, I never once thought about making it a career, because honestly, all of the trainers that I saw at the gym were like just total meatheads, and
Yep, I know what you
you
mean.
know, being in the weight room, it was always me and a bunch of guys. And there was nothing that I didn't see myself in that space. And it wasn't until I had some pretty significant injuries playing rugby in college that I had to deal with through my 20s. And then when I met my wife when I was 30, who's an exercise physiologist, she really helped me regain the quality of life that I had been missing. I had gained a lot of weight. I had gained and lost quite a bit of weight a number of times in my 20s. My back was in really bad shape, and I just was very weak. And as an athlete, a former athlete, I just kept trying to kind of push it. And whenever I would get back into and say, okay, I need to start, exercising and moving again, I would go way too hard, way too fast, which is honestly what most of us do, for sure. And I've done it a number of times, not like I did it once. And I would get hurt again. My back would go out again. And my quality of life completely changed. And as a result, then I started to get certifications on the side as I was a teacher, because I remember at 30 going, well, if I feel like this at 30, what is 60 going to feel like? And that was really
Yeah.
eye-opening for me. So that's
So
what got me into it.
it's really interesting that you mentioned that because of having a traumatic coming out experience, you coped with it by going to the gym. Because I've actually heard that from more than one person that I know, that they didn't feel accepted by their family, et cetera, and just got really into going to the gym. Do you have any like theories on like why that's a commonality?
Well, I think that you can be, you can get obsessed with anything. So I think that people deal with things differently. I think that I've also, one, it's a way to get out of your house and it's a way to get away from people, and you can put your headphones on and just do your thing. Fitness is also a very natural stress reliever. And so for me, that was really a huge part of it. And I think when I came out, and other people that I've talked to that is also similar, some of it was actually going through a real spiritual and mental transformation. And so then it followed suit that you want to transform and change your body. And
yeah,
so
that does make a lot of sense.
yeah, I think that that's kind of, that seemed to me in my life as like a normal progression for me.
Now you mentioned to me before that there's like a huge link between mental health and physical health. Like obviously, if your mental health isn't good, it's going to make it a lot harder to get physically healthy and stuff. Can you talk about that connection a little?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we exercise, a bunch of different things happen in our body that is connected to our mental state, essentially. So one of them is that when we exercise, there's an enzyme that is secreted in the muscles that actually goes after a substance in the blood that accumulates with stress, and that's linked with depression as well. So that's one thing. Another thing is that exercise stimulates neurogenesis, which is when we create new neurons in our brain. So we're literally supporting our brain health through exercise. And it's something where if we look at our physiology is like 200,000 years old in our body. And so our reward systems and our pathways are about basically keeping us alive and then also automating things in order to make them easier. If we're doing things repeatedly, our brain goes, oh, we're doing that repeatedly, that must be something that's important. Let's try and automate it as much as possible, which is what habits are. And the other thing is that we had to survive so much. We had to rely on our physicality. Everything that we did as natural people in the world before modernity, before modern life, had to do with our physical body. And that only changed about 100 years ago. And I feel like every 5 years, there's another really significant change in how much general physical activity we're losing. So, you know, exercising as well also gives you, it gives you a boost of serotonin, which is a feel good neurotransmitter. So it gives you that natural high feeling. It lessens your anxiety. It distracts you from negative emotions and states of mind. And then the other thing is you feel accomplished after you do something physical. You actually feel good because from that, ancient pathway, our mind is trying to reward us for that physical activity. Because if we had to exert ourselves physically in order to get food, then the reward was not just the food, but your body actually felt good afterwards and then went into kind of a recovery. So yeah, it's significant.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That makes total sense. I just didn't think about it that much.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
I have heard that like getting regular exercise is in studies about as effective as taking an antidepressant. So certainly that's encouraging. So to get the running in.
And the side effects are better as well.
Yes.
We talk about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Not that there's anything wrong if you do take meds, if that works for you.
Absolutely.
Don't want to say that.
Absolutely. No. But put the movement in there, right?
Oh,
because
yeah.
we can't, yeah. We want,
if you're taking the meds you need and exercising, think about how happy you'll be then.
Yes. Right. Exactly.
Whatever works for the individual. Okay, so let's say that I'm somebody who has never exercised for fitness in my whole life. What recommendations would you have for starting out?
So the first thing that I would say is, along with this idea that when we get really clear about where we're starting from, whether or not it's comfortable, and usually if people are trying to make a change, where they're in right now is not comfortable, right? Where we thought, oh, I gotta, I have to make this change, right? So one, it's leading with compassion, having some compassion for yourself, that you don't feel good in your life in some way, and maybe you don't feel good in your body in some way. And from there, it's starting much, 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 much smaller than you think that you should or that you're capable. I, first of all, hate the word should, right? It's like, should says who, because that has inherent expectations in it, and as adults, because we have a body, we think that it doesn't matter that we might have lived a sedentary lifestyle for 5 years. That's it. I'm going for a run today. And then people just go out and they just start running, right? And then their knees hurt, their back hurts, their neck hurts. So we have to realize that when we start moving after maybe a period of time without activity, we just have to be aware that our body is going to need to build. So starting with things like walking is fantastic. Starting really slow and actually going for, and there's a ton of studies on this too, when we talk about like how habits are actually integrated, trying to go for like 1% better every day. And that means literally drinking one more glass of water, or having, when I work with people, we talk about when people are like, oh, I want to start making my lunches at home, or that changed a little bit with COVID because everyone was doing everything at home. But then maybe you're making that lunch at home one time a week. That's different. And building the momentum, because people always think that it's motivation. I'm not motivated to do this. That's not really it. Well, motivation is very fickle. I think of it like as an emotion. It's there sometimes and it's gone other times. You can't count on it. And I like to talk much more about momentum. And so when you are, and this is also backed by research, when you are building momentum towards something, it has to be something that is so small that it would be silly that you didn't do it, right? That it would be, I can drink one more glass of water today than I did yesterday. And people negate that as like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like I need to, just start doing all of this right now. And as everyone knows, 2 days into a diet or a week into a diet, and you're eating a full pizza, you're drinking a bottle of wine, because you've been trying to white knuckle and change all of these behaviors that you may have been doing for years overnight. And that's actually not how our minds work at all. That's how marketing.
It's like breaking it into digestible pieces. Like if you're going to get a college degree, you're not just like, okay, this is my whole step in getting a college degree. You're like, all right, well, I have to apply, and then I have to buy the books, and then blah, 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 blah.
Yes. I love that analogy. I use that analogy sometimes as well. When I talk about focusing on letting go of the outcome and focusing on the behaviors. And I say that, if someone has gone to college or they've done any type of course or whatever, you can't just say, okay, am I done now? Like on the first day, oh, I went to, one lecture, that was an hour video. Great. I'm good. Right. Everyone would be like, what's your problem? Like, are you crazy? Right? Is something wrong? That you don't understand that it's going to take time. And that's something, because the fitness marketing machine and the weight loss industry is so powerful, and it's so, I find it very invasive, like it invades everything, that we really, our timetable and our understanding of like how our body works and how change happens is non-existent. Nobody really knows this information unless you actually study it and you start looking into habit formation and stuff like that, like I do. And that's a huge detriment to us as a society, because that marketing is just so strong and ubiquitous.
I think another part of that too, now that I'm thinking about it, is like when you see like marketing for fitness stuff, it's always like really hot, jacked, like white people, like with beautiful hair, etc. And you never see people who are just starting out with fitness who've been like, sedentary at their jobs, used to exercise, but then had kids, anything like that.
Right. Absolutely. And they're all 25. Like all of them are,
Well, the only people
25.
who work out are 25, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's very exclusionary, the
Mhm.
marketing. And the other thing about it is only 20% of Americans have a health club membership of any kind.
Mhm.
And so that leaves 80% of people that are not doing any type of organized exercise. And also, if you looked at the 20%, how many people are actually using it on a regular basis?
Yeah, the ones who don't go are subsidizing my membership.
Yeah, right. There
But yeah.
are huge gyms that their whole business model is that you will forget that you're paying for their
Mhm.
membership.
Yeah.
And that's pretty sad. If we think about it and we
Yeah.
think about where our health is as a country, that's indicative of why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are nearing towards the end of our time, but I want to open it for if anybody watching has any questions for Meghan. Just give us a shout.
I have a good question. When you work out, always use weights or do boxing? That's a good workout.
Yeah, so it's going to be, that's a good question. It's going to be whatever works for you. So when we talk about overall health, and even when we talk about things like weight loss or body transformation, we really, building strength and building muscle helps everything. So whenever we are, the best kind of combination for overall health is to get some cardiovascular training, which can also include walking. That's aerobic training. It can include bicycling. It can include going to the gym and just doing movements continuously for 20 minutes, right? But then we also want to have days when we dedicate ourselves to getting stronger. And that also has to be a progression. And so I'm a huge proponent of building strength because all of the research shows that as we age, that our quality of life is very much tied to how much muscle we have on our body. And we only make muscle kind of to a certain, we only have so many decades when we're building that muscle. And so it's important to do that and to kind of, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got a note in the chat from Dana that says, "This is great. I'm cooking dinner. That's why the video is off. But thank you, Meghan. I agree that in my life, queerness has been my superpower." So that's
cool,
awesome.
Dana. Thank you for that.
All right. So before we close, I just want to make sure that everybody has contact info. Should they need it, I'll provide mine. If you want to email me with health ed questions, questions about Health Collective, anything like that, my email is kima@hglhc.org. And my phone number is 860-278-4163, extension 111. I will also put that in the video description when I upload this. This will be uploaded to YouTube and Facebook. So follow our social media, and I'll also tweet it. So Meghan, how can people reach you if they have questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So on social media, you can find me on Facebook just by my name, Meghan Crutchley. And on Instagram, my handle is Habit Queer. And that's where I talk about queer health, talk about nutrition, talk about all different types of things. And to email me with any questions, my email is Meghan, MEGHAN, @beorganicfit.com, because the name of my company is Organic Fitness. So yeah, absolutely. Feel free to reach out.
I dropped the email address for you in the chat. And again, that will also be on the video description
Awesome.
for when that is uploaded. So let me just plug our upcoming events again. Next Wednesday, we have a virtual trivia night with Empowerment New Haven. And you can sign up for that in advance. There are cash prizes. We also have a yoga in the park meetup coming up at Elizabeth Park in West Hartford. That's going to be next Tuesday, 2 Tuesdays from now, excuse me, the 24th. We're meeting at 5:15. And last, we also have upcoming a gay bike ride in West Hartford. That's going to be September 16th. So everyone keep an eye out on our social media. Wear your masks, stay safe, get vaccinated if you haven't, please, I'm begging you. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much, Megan, for coming live with us. It was really great to talk
Absolutely.
to you.
You're welcome. And for local peeps, if you're around this Sunday, I'm going to be speaking at the Athleta at 10 o'clock in Milford, and there's going to be goodie bags, and it's open to everyone. So hope to see you there.
All right. Have a great night, folks.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
Pride.